I like great things. I'm willing to wait 5 years. It's a very slow scroll, and you can slowly see the image coming out. I'm fine waiting for that. I don't need immediate thing. I'll just and if it fails, I enjoy the process. I love the process. I like designing things. I'm fine with I don't need instant result. I'm okay doing the work. And I can't wait to see what's beyond that.
Alex, aka Noax, aka a badass designer who's a creative who definitely knows what he wants and how to get it in the right way. And he joins us for a fabulous episode where he muses on the meaning of design and how his inspiring approach to tackling challenges is something we can all borrow from. So, enjoy this episode where Alex drops some brilliant career advice to finding your baby, the work-life balance, and his ever-changing relationship with his projects, and what it is like to live with the opposite of art block. Let's go. All right, let's go. Hey everyone, yep. Welcome back to the Learn Squared podcast, and I'm delighted to welcome on an amazing guest today, Alex. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
So excited to speak with you. A lot of things we can cover, but I guess we'll get over the formalities, get that out the way. Would you be kind enough to let everybody know who you are and what you do?
Well, hi everyone, my name is Alex. You might know me as Noax, which is not my real name, but that's what people know me by. I do design things for games, concept design, primarily focusing on hard surface, vehicles, weapons, props, anything basically that needs to be designed. And I've been doing that for the 8+ years, I think now, so a long time.
How does those 8 years feel? Does it feel like when you think about that, do you feel like I felt those 8 years, or do you look back thinking, whoa, where's the time gone?
No, I'd say these like past 8 years were very, what's the right word, formative, and a lot of learning and a lot of self-discovery, not only through art design but also just life. I just turned 29, so I'm kind of at the end of my 20s, and I think for most people 20s is the time where you kind of just, I don't know, like I feel like 20s is like you're still an infant. Like I feel like only now I'm going to be entering like an adulthood. Up until now it's all like experimentation and making mistakes and trying things, and it both with work and just like with life in general. So I would say the past 8-9 years were very interesting, yeah, in terms of life and career.
Is there like any kind of standout particular thing? I know that's quite like I guess a vague and very specific question. Of those 8 years where you were like, that event is probably what shaped or identifies those previous, or that 8 year period?
Yes, the one of the actually kind of like the life defining or like life changing event for me was before I entered the industry, I guess, or before I got my first job. I was still in college in UK. It's not university. It's like school, college, then university. So it's like before university. And I finished like a course in graphic design, and then I left. And then I had like a random job for 6 months. And when I was doing that job, I was like, I really don't enjoy it. I don't want to do it. And I need to kind of like change something, because I always knew I wanted to do design. I knew I wanted to do design since I was like a baby. Like that was like I knew exactly what I want. I just didn't know how to get there. And when I was doing that job, one day I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna quit, and I'm gonna go back to the college. So what I did, I took a loan. In UK you can take a government loan. I took a loan for 1 year of college that basically paid for the course and for my expenses. I guess I rented a cheap apartment, and my mindset was, I'll use that loan to buy myself 1 year of kind of freedom of to do whatever I want to do in the safety of like educational institution. And I didn't do any coursework. I almost got kicked out multiple times But throughout that year, I really spent focusing on like concept design, and I really focused on exactly what I want to do. And that was always like vehicle, car design, you know, the stuff that you see me doing now. So taking that year, taking that gamble really paid off, because right by the end of it, by the end of that year, 2 weeks before that, I got the first job at Cloud Imperium Games, which was, I guess, a mix of portfolio and a lot of luck, because prior to that, I met some people who worked there, specifically Jort and Daniel, who used to be concept artists there. And I think they kind of referred me internally, and that got me through. And yeah, so by the end of the year, I moved from London to Wilmslow, which is not far from Manchester, and that was it. So like that 1 year, taking that gamble and really kind of just believing in myself, like, oh,
Hmm.
this is what I want to do. I mean, if it doesn't work out, I can do something else. But if it does work out, great. That was really kind of life changing, because if I would not go for that, if I would just stay in the job that I had and I carried on, it was comfortable. I don't know what would happen, but yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. At that time, did you ever kind of like think to yourself to not take that gamble, or were you as sure you were as a baby wanting to do this as a career? Were you as sure then thinking I need to take the gamble? Like, did something push you to make that gamble, or was it a case of you thought let's try this? It's more like a strategic approach, if that makes sense.
It was, I mean, maybe gamble is not the right way to,
Yeah.
maybe gamble is not like the right word for that. It's very strategic approach, because like I mentioned, I wanted to be in a position where I can do whatever I want to do for a 1 year, and whatever I want to do turned out to just be concept design. So in that sense, it was very strategic. I'm lucky to be in UK where you can do that,
Hmm.
like, or you can take like a year off paid. Uh, it's the only loan I taken out in my life. It's the other than my mortgage. It's
Yeah.
literally like it was the best loan taken out ever, and there was never a doubt in my mind that I would. I think I would regret not doing it.
Hmm.
Like I already was, like, when I was doing that random job every day, I was like, I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? I can do the other stuff. The only thing I need is time, because I know how to get there. That's the thing. I always knew what I need to do to get to where I want. I just needed time, and I needed to buy that time because I didn't have money of my own. So I went that path, and with a lot of luck and help from others, it really worked out. So yeah, I just I kind of believed in myself, and
Hmm.
since then, the reason why it was so defining, the reason why it was important, and why I'm telling the story is because since then, that's how I approach everything. Because we live in a world where you never know what's going to happen. Everything is kind of random. Every day is a roll of dice, but there are things we can control, and there are other people that have achieved something or have done something, and you can look at their path and be like, oh, if they did it, I can do it. So now a lot of the stuff that I approach is I just it might sound cheesy, but I just believe it's gonna work out. And
Interesting.
most of the times it does. Especially if you truly like want it, you put in effort and you put in patience is a key with a lot of things. But here's even more important: if you believe in yourself, if you believe in outcome, you have the vision, you have the patience, you will get there. And it can be as small as finishing a sketch, and as large as, I don't know, changing career, making big project, whatever, insert.
Hmm.
But like patience and faith, I guess, is yeah. So yeah, that year taught me that, oh yeah, if you really put effort and wait for stuff, it might happen, might not. I don't know.
Sick. And you were like 21, 22 at the time?
Yes, I joined CAG when I was 21.
Wow. That's incredible. That's an amazing mindset as well because yeah, you found this formula, or you kind of like sensed this kind of formula, and you went with it, and it worked, and it's worked for you since. Like, I guess and not to speak for you, but it doesn't sound like you're being dramatic either. Like, it does sound like that is a proven formula that I guess you apply to anything and everything that kind of needs it. Is that correct?
it works. So yes, I believe that everything in life. So obviously, everyone has different circumstances, different uh, positions in life, and it will not always work. But in my world, in the world that I live, or like in my position, I realize that for me, I can apply it to a lot of things. Uh, what would be another example? Like, another good example is something I don't do, but purposely. Like I have a guitar at home, right? And I'm always like, oh, I would love to, like, I'd love to play it. I'd love to practice it more. And I know that if I take a year off and I really put my mind to it, I'll get it done. And so goes everything else. I've approached, for example, another. I did that with the gym. I
Cool.
used to hate exercise, and like the past 2 years were fantastic because I got to the point where like, oh, I really need it. And it was again, I kind of was like, you know what? If I just stick with it, if I really believe in it, that it works, because it works for everybody else, why wouldn't it
Hmm.
work for me? Like we're not, yeah, everyone is different, but we're not that different. We're all kind of humans of the same planet. And so I try to see where can I apply this mindset, really being patient, believing in positive outcome, and not rushing things, being
Hmm.
very calculated with how I approach stuff and not doing like random stuff, especially when it comes to like design and work. Uh, Holding back, stepping back, and looking at the bigger picture of what you do can be really healthy. And the reason it works for me, for example, is I don't have a need, and we would like we're switching now into kind of like work or like design works. It's more relatable. I don't need, I don't feel a need to like constantly show stuff. I've been working for a long time. I've worked on many great projects, but if you open my portfolio, it's like the only client work I have is like Star Citizen from many years ago, and there is a seemingly like a big gap. I worked on a lot of Call of Duty titles. I don't know how many. Like I'm not sure which where the work went, but like none of that stuff is shown. I worked on like other things that's not in a portfolio. It's such some IPs that I will never show in a portfolio, but I don't feel the need for that. And it's because my focus now is how can I show the best possible work that I like, the best possible work that I enjoy. And to do that and to show it in a very particular fashion, it needs a lot of time and a lot of energy and faith that it's going to work out. So now I have a lot of personal work that I'm sitting on. It would be very easy to start blasting it on Instagram. I have stuff to post every single week and to show and to get likes and all of that. But right now, the goal is to, okay, accumulate a nice body of work and release it in one go. And for that, it's kind of a big gamble because you're like, oh my God, I've been working on this stuff for like years now and like no one sees it and no one knows about it. Is it worth doing it? I don't know. But again, going back to my past, spending that year really accumulating that work, I'm like, it's fine. I can do it. I can sit on all of this stuff until it's fully done and then release it. So that patience, I guess you can call it patience and faith in the future outcome really helps me with personal work and client work because client work takes forever. Like the project I'm on right now, 3+ years. And I'm like, that's a lot of work done. And I'm hoping I can show it at some point
Yeah.
and release it. And you just got to be patient.
Yes. Well put. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening now who, whether it clicks with them immediately, but or eventually, that will definitely click because what you just said there is absolute gold in my opinion. And in terms of in multiple ways, whether it's a case of just building, like you mentioned, a great body of work, especially in a climate now where there's so much output and there's so much noise, like that's a great way to kind of, at least if you are going to make a splash, so to speak, in this ocean that we have, if you do something that's concentrated, that has a lot of quality, it's got a better chance than if you do it in that scattergun approach, which I guess is the norm, you could say. But also, even just connecting with your own work. And there is a disconnect when, from my own experiences as well, when you just kind of do stuff half baked, release them, and then move on to the next thing. And then you realize you just got a lot of half baked things that no one really wants to eat because it's half baked. But also just to kind of be patient. And I think it is a throwaway word. It's has a obvious meaning, but it's also kind of vague because it's hard for people to really understand what that means. Like usually it's like wait until you can open your Christmas presents, that kind of patience, or it just means waiting for an opportunity, which kind of implies that you have to wait for someone to give it to you if it's a case of patience, or there's a patience where you kind of work towards. If that kind of makes sense, if my ramble is coherent enough. But that kind of patience that you have does that ever kind of wobble at times for you? Like, is that something that you quite centered on, or do you ever get those doubts that you did mention, where a case of like, do I do this way? Do I let it out, or do I kind of sit on things as in referred to your work? How connected are you, or in control, if that's a better way to ask, is of your patience?
So one thing that helps me greatly with that stuff, and to answer directly, like I don't wobble or I don't have doubts, and that's because so I've been doing this thing for a while now, like working, and at this point, like the like industry job and like day to day, it's just a daily life. I'm not super excited about it. I'm not like 5 years ago, like, oh my god, I get to design spaceship. Right now, I'm like, I care about my job deeply and I do my best, but at the same time, I don't really care. As in, like, again, I don't really need to show anything to anyone, and because of that, because I don't, I mean, okay, so it would be unfair to say that I don't need validation. Everybody needs validation, and it's very important that people do get validation because that drives them forward. That's how humans work. But it has to be very healthy, where you, like, nowadays with Instagram, it's so easy. You can just blast and get numbers. You
Mhm.
just post, and you get like, and people get hooked on that, and I get it. I When I see numbers not going up, I'm like, what's going on? But at the same time, I'm trying to, like, okay, why people care about my stuff? Why do they like it? What's is it meaningful to them? So for me, I'm gonna be patient to the point where I am fully confident that the thing that I'm releasing is not just good work, but it's something that first and foremost I'm happy with. I have a lot of work that I've never shown, personal work that I'll never show to anyone because, I mean, yeah, I could milk it for likes, but I don't need to. Just don't like the work. It's fine. And somebody else will look at it and like, "This is the best thing I've seen. Why am I not showing it?" Like, don't like it. So I'm patient up to the point where I internally know that, okay, this is done and this is good. And until it's done and it's good, it's not going to be shown. Maybe sometimes I'll tease stuff or stuff that doesn't go through, like some stuff that I don't like anymore. It's not terrible. It's something like, you know what? It's not the best work, but we can still show it. It's not black and white. There is a bit of gray. But the main thing that I want to communicate is, again, just got to be patient, and it's released. It's going to be released when it's released. And I don't really care about the outcome. That's another thing. Because first and foremost, I do it for myself. I already have I have a job right now, and I'm pretty sure that if I need to, I'll find work. Like, the work is not, it's not a problem. And easy for me to say. I get it. There's a lot of people who struggle getting it. I fully understand. And when I mean by finding work, like, there's a lot of work in the world. It doesn't need to be concept design. So I just do my projects, or my project for myself first and foremost. I need to be happy with. If I'm not happy with, nobody else will be, or at least I think so. and that makes it easy to just stick with it. Just one thing that helps me with that stuff is we we live in a world where everything is instant. Everything is like that. You just post and it's there. You get infinite content on Instagram, but it's just or Twitter, ArtStation, whatever you want. And this is a bit controversial, but does it need to be there? Does it need to exist? Why? Why people post like, and you have all the right to post and share and explore whatever you want, and it might be meaningful to you. I don't know. But the way I see it, some of the greatest things in life took so long to make. And I'm talking about stuff like space shuttle, the B-2 bomber, like iconic designs in this world, like the some of the greatest car designs, some of the greatest furniture, or you like the iconic pieces of our world. They were like some stuff takes decades to make, and I find there is a beauty in the process. There's a beauty in the timeline. One thing I do, like I'm designing some stuff for myself now, and I would do work and then I just leave it for 2 months. I have it open sometimes and I look at it and I just marinate and marinate and marinate, and I get so accustomed to it. I get so used to it to the point where I don't even care about it anymore. And then I'm like, am I still excited about it? Do I still want to work about the thing that I don't care? And if I don't do it. And if I'm like, oh yeah, there is still something in there, and I'll continue. And I had that recently. I was back on a flight from holiday and I was on my phone. I was checking all my like personal designs and I'm like zooming in and I'm like, I haven't worked on that stuff for 6 months. And I'm like, damn, I really want to get back to it. And it doesn't matter that it took so long. It doesn't matter. I'm happy to work on it. And once it's done, I'm probably going to dislike it and I'll make another thing. So I think it's important to be passionate about what you do, to be in love with what you do and do it for yourself and not for the I guess whatever the outcome. And that's another quick point. To me, like I said, like, oh, I don't care about the outcome, but everybody does, and to a degree I do as well. It's just not a front facing thing for me. And so I put all this effort, all this time into the work, and I'm trying to make it as honest and as personal to me and as good as possible. And then in the back of my head, like, man, what if this leads to something? And that's another exciting part. And not lead to like, I don't know, somebody likes it or saves it or shares it. What if it leads to something better? What if it leads to something greater? And that's also like a nice component. But first and foremost, do it for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. That's a personal journey I'm going through almost to a T in that sense as well. Like we're approaching 2024 now. I haven't done anything meaningful work wise, although I've been putting stuff out since 2019, which is when my youngest child was born. Because I understood at that point in time how much energy that takes and what energy I want to put into my work. And that was, I guess, my trigger in that regard. But also knowing that I need to work a lot harder than most just to even kind of get to a decent level. But what you described there, that thing we just mentioned specifically about on the flight back, I was doing that recently. And one thing which I think we can definitely agree on, or at least we're similar on, is the joy of exploring, the joy of the craft, as opposed to, although it's there, like you perfectly described, but how people consume that, how people appreciate that, it's almost secondary or tertiary, or maybe even not at all. But it's that first bit that really inspires me. And there was some stuff that, yes, technically garbage, very old, does not stand the test of time, but the idea itself, that nugget, was something that was like, yes, like that is something that you want to explore, you want to bring to life, you want to give it the chance that it can be. So it's reassuring to hear that from yourself as well. But also that relationship with, I guess, the craft, because have you ever been in a situation, or rather with your relationship with your personal work versus client work, has that always been like side by side, or did the personal stuff kind of come more recently? Or have you always kind of seen work as work? and personal stuff as personal stuff, and obviously your skills are shared across both as they're needed to be.
So for a long time, so up until 2 years ago, probably, so like the first 6, 7 years, I would consider it. And now that's me looking in retrospect. I really realized that that time was like I was learning. I'm still learning. You will forever learn, but that was like and learning a lot of things. Uh, how to work in the industry, how to do work, etc., etc. So for a long time, at first, like work was like, oh my god, that's super exciting, and then personal work, whatever, and then at some point, my work got really annoying, and the rose glasses disappear and you're like, do I really want to wake up and do this thing? And then personal work took priority, and there was like a lot of separation. And in the last couple of years, uh, my kind of personal my personal work helps me to inform my client work in a lot of aspects. Not design. Design is always separate and very sensitive to whatever the IP or even personal work you do. So there is obviously some sort of like, I guess, style crossover because you can't avoid it. It's kind of like inherent to you. But right now, my client work and my personal work, I kind of see them in tandem, and I'm trying to align them in terms of the quality, the idea quality, the execution. And I treat it all as a one big, I guess, thing, right? They both extremely important. I don't separate. I know people sometimes that, oh, you do work, you come home and you do whatever. I treat both as like as my design journey, as my art, right? It's just one has more conditions attached to it that other people influence and it pays. And the other one comes with different challenges, being that you can do whatever you want. That's not always good case. So balance, because you can do whatever, and when you can do whatever, you will do nothing oftentimes because you like have all these million ideas and you do nothing rather than focusing on one. So I kind of try to, in my head, merge both together and approach it as like one big piece. Because when I think of my portfolio, of my projects that I do, I don't, I look at it like, okay, how does it all look together? Like, how does the whole thing come together? What will people see when they see my whole portfolio? Because a lot of the times you look at the portfolios and there's massive disconnects. There's 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 stuff that's very hard to, like, your client work is one thing, your personal work is another thing, then you're doing some random sketches, and I look at it and I'm like, what are you? What are you trying to do here? What are you trying to convey? You don't have to do any of that. You can just approach it whatever you any way you want. But I approach this one big single unit that's kind of like intertwined, both inform each other. There is a degree of separation. Obviously, I don't want to do exact things I do at work for myself, and the stuff I do for myself, I don't want to do work. So there's professional disconnection in that sense. But overall, I don't see. Sometimes I see work as work. There are days when I'm like, I don't want to do anything. Like, it's just annoyed or the task is not good. It happens. I'm not perfect. The work is not perfect. But for the most part, I enjoy designing, and I'm in a position now with my client that I work with. It's kind of like a dream project. It's a dream team. It's not a lot of friction. So for me, I can really just do it. I approach client work almost as a personal work. So it's a one unit. It wasn't like that for the whole time. Only the past few years. Up until before that, it was a lot of like learning and trying. Now it's different learning. It's a kind of a new step into uh not just learning like, oh, you learn software, you learn design, or you learn certain shape language. Now it's learning to kind of navigate design and the career and your personal projects and passions in the context of your life. Like, how
Mhm.
does it fit into my life? Because it's such a big part of my life. Like, I live and breathe design, but I also need to have like stuff outside of that. So it's something I'm still figuring out. Maybe in 10 years we can talk
Yeah,
about that.
that's sick. And I'm sure, like in 10 years' time, it would kind of maybe be the same kind of viewpoint. It's still, I'm still trying to figure it out. Although there has been growth since in that 10 years as well. Maybe that's the beauty of it. Like this thing will always be shifting and fluid, and I guess it's more about fueling it so it doesn't kind of peter out and die out, as opposed to trying to define what it is. But that to me is always like a fascinating thing. Um, it sounds like it's like a living, breathing entity. The way it kind of like the both, I guess you could say, hemispheres are either existing because of each other or feeding into each other. Um, so I guess like you don't have a particular like. Do you think they kind of both need each other, like the work side and the personal side, or would you happily maybe let one get taken over by the other?
So I think for a healthy development of a designer, of a modern day designer or an artist. I don't like word artist. It's very abstract. I'm a designer. I'm not an artist, so I'm
Hmm.
going to use that. I think for a well-rounded designer, you absolutely need both because one will teach you how to navigate the the industry and the professional landscape of life, not just industry of life, how you talk to people, how you present, all of that. And the other one, the personal work, if you do it correctly, if you approach it correctly, will teach you about who you are. I know it's a very big, like, philosophical claim here, but through personal work, you can really find out what do you care about? What do you want to show to the world? Do you just want to put out a million sketches, or do you want to make a, like, I don't know, like a iconic design, or what is that you want to do? And you have to do a lot of personal work to explore that, and it takes a lot of time. And going in parallel with client work, it's really hard because we only have so many hours in a day and you have to do a lot of things. But as you get better, as you get quicker at what you do, as you improve your workflows and you narrow down your identity in design, and it will shift over time, but it's kind of, at the beginning it might be like a very big jagged line, and then it kind of becomes wavy. So for me it became like wavy. There is room to explore, there is room to
Hmm.
try other things, but it's I kind of understand where I sit and what I like. I know that I'm not gonna suddenly try out a super stylized Disney Pixar style and fall in love with it. I'm pretty certain about that. So I don't need to try that. Maybe like 10 years ago I tried to do splash art for like League of Legends. Like I quickly found out I don't want that. And it was like the jagged line. So so now I would say that ideally, and I'm only saying it because I'm a little bit jaded and I've been doing it for a long time. I would like the personal work to somehow take all, like, have more time. Obviously, everybody wants that. That's everyone's goal, to
Hmm.
do more personal work and less client work. That's it's not a secret. But I still think the client work is very important. It also keeps you in check. You can really test your skills in a real world environment, because what works in your personal work might not work in the client work. And client work is amazing to build up speed, agility, and focus, because you have to. Otherwise, you, like with personal work, yeah, I can spend 6 months doing something. I can't do that with the client work. So I develop speed, agility in the client work, and I develop vision in the personal work, and then they both
Mm.
help each other. So agility from client work comes to my personal work, and my vision and kind of refined design thinking that took 6 months on the personal work can be applied in an hour in the client work because it's
Mm.
already tried and tested. Eventually, the goal would be just to, live off of my personal work. That would be that. We still need to make money, right? Like, the
Sure.
world is a real
Yes. Yes.
place.
Yes. Now that's true. I mean, like I guess, but when you are a designer and a creator, like ultimately you just want to be able to create, and then everything you kind of do, you realize you're just trying to figure out ways to feed that habit, as opposed to the other way around, where it's kind of like this is the thing that generates what can we do all the time. Um, is always spent just thinking about doing that thing. Do you think it's possible? because I agree with you with the client stuff. And one thing that I've discovered about myself is I like having the other thing there as an incentive when I get fatigued by that particular thing. So it flips for me. When I'm on client stuff, I'm like, I can't wait to do personal stuff. When I'm on personal stuff, it's like, I want to get back to the client stuff because this is whatever roadblock I'm struggling with at the time. Um, does that ever happen for you?
Maybe I don't know. It's a good question. Again, I approach everything because to me, I'm solving design problems. I like solving design problems, and there are some problems that I want to solve faster than others. But generally speaking, like when I do client work, I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to do my personal work. It's just I know that I'll get to do it, and it's fine. I just focus on the thing in front of me. I get it done well, and then I move to the another thing. It's a very cold approach. It's very unemotional, machine-like approach that I don't know if it's good or not, but it works for me. It might not work for others. I'm trying. I'm trying to be in a way as emotionless about a lot of this stuff as possible while maintaining a lot of emotion in the design itself. So when you do design, you're trying to convey some sort of emotion, but the way you approach it and how you think about approaching it, or like if there's something else can wait. Like right now, obviously client work always takes priority. You do that the first thing
Yes.
in the morning, and then whatever time's left you can spend on the other stuff. And as your career grows, the balance can shift.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had it in the past, like especially when I was in the studio. I was like, I can't wait to finish this, and I just want to do my own thing. But that was because I knew that that's the only way to escape, right?
Yes.
So like if you're unhappy with something, the only way in this industry to like improve things, it's you either get lucky, you can just put all your eggs in that basket and just wait for luck, or you can work yourself out of it. I know it doesn't sound glamorous, but there you go. If you don't like something, you just make a portfolio, you make a better piece, you improve yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then you seek new opportunities. And that's in those moments when that happened to me, that's when I'm like, oh, I can't wait to do personal work because that's my escape route, and I
Yeah.
need to build it. But now with my client work, I don't want to escape. If anything, I'm trying to do everything to preserve my current relationship with the studio I work with because it's such an amazing place. Just for those who wonder, it's Firewalk Studios. It's not a secret studio. It's we're making a new IP. It's already announced. It's called Concord. There's a teaser online. Amazing people, amazing team. Really grateful to be with them, and I don't want to escape. I'm happy working there. It's an amazing project.
Sick. Um, what is it about? I know you just described a few things there, but what is it about that particular studio? Maybe it's the project, maybe it's the whole setup, but what is it that really connects with you that makes you drawn to it and just feels like a perfect fit?
It's a balance of many things, and primarily it's obviously kind of like the art style, the art direction, the IP itself, which I find particularly very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, its next greatest thing is people, right? I work with some of the ex Bungie people, so I like to be on the teams that are better than me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like to be on the team where I can learn from someone or I can improve something and where I can add something. So on this project, there's a lot of people who are incredible designers who don't necessarily, for example, work in 3D or use the same techniques and approaches as I do. And hopefully they can learn from my workflows and my thinking. And I definitely learning a lot from them. So, and they're just fantastic people. Everyone's very down to earth. It's a very chill studio. Uh, just an amazing place to work. And the I work remotely. I freelance for them. I work from UK. The studio is in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
They treat me well. Obviously, like you hear all these horror stories from all these studios where the working conditions aren't great or people don't necessarily care about the employees. And what I found with Firewalk, they really seemingly care about me. And I mean, of course, there's a degree of business to it, but it seems more genuine than in other places.
Hmm.
And I just didn't have so far a better offer than them. And we've been working for so long together that I just don't see a reason. You always hear like, oh, jump studios every 3 years, blah, blah. Like, yeah, to a degree, it's true. But at some point, you kind of like, especially in this industry, there is a limit. There is an actual ceiling that you can get to, and you can't jump either like higher or
Hmm.
lower. I guess I feel like, at least in my mind, there are some studios where once you reach them, the next thing is probably you start your own studio or you start your like own very personal thing. And I think for me with the Firewalk, I kind of reaching that point where I'm like, I don't know if there are studios like that, like that gonna be so good to me in terms of everything.
Hmm.
And I dread the day when we don't work anymore. Like that's yeah. But yeah, great project, great people, great studio. They treat me well, and I being compensated fairly, and everything is amazing.
Sick. Now that's amazing to hear, because it's like you mentioned, there's always like stories or whatever, and even everyone has their own experiences on particular things. Um, but for me, like the specific things that you mentioned, why you enjoying that, that's the stuff that I want to hear. Because that's the stuff that like I'm hunting for, or just generally like that. What I think is how things should be, because as you're showing, is proof is in the pudding, right? And like if that is working, is clicking, and there's harmony and all that good stuff, and great things come about it, it shows that that's a good formula to follow. Um, did you know that this is the kind of setup you enjoyed based on previous experiences, or did it only click with you that okay, this is all I've been looking for, this is perfect, only until it happened? If that makes sense.
So I was freelancing for a while before that already when I left Cloud Imperium Games. Cloud Imperium Games was great, the in-house experience, and then I was freelancing like for Tencent and other studios, which was great. It was all
Hmm.
good. But so like then I joined uh, Firewalk Studios, and at first I found it very challenging because of it was very intimidating. Like the when I joined and the task that I got, I was like, oh, it was it was challenging for me at that time, especially like early in freelance. You don't really know how, like, you're still learning how this stuff navigates. You work from home, you're behind the concrete wall, and you don't see anything. You
Yes.
can't react to people's faces. You kind of like you send stuff into the ether and you hope for the best. And like the first year was definitely pretty hard, and then eventually I was like, wow, this is like really working out really well. For the most part, I'm not being rushed. I have great tasks. I uh i enjoy what I'm doing. Seemingly people enjoy my results, so there's a lot of affirmation coming from the studio. They're like, hey, look, you're doing great, fine, even though you're like not here. It's good, keep going.
Mm.
And over time you just kind of build that trust. And now with all of these aspects that I've experienced with them, uh, I just like maybe there is other studio that could do that. And like I only kind of came to this conclusion. It's set a new bar. That's how I can put it. Like Firewalk for me set a new bar for I don't know how you should feel in freelance. They go, I can't just take the feeling and give to people so they know what it feels like. But
Sure.
that's how I feel. So now I'm very reluctant to like do something else or like leave or work for somebody else just because I'm like, is it gonna be the same? Maybe. I
Yes.
don't know. But yeah, it definitely set a pretty high bar for freelance expectations. And I think a lot of people, that's like another point that I see amongst a lot of designers and freelancers, both in like in-house and freelance people, is you have to set expectations for the place you want to work at. Absolutely, because so many people, they just like go for whatever. And I understand you can't cherry pick your life. Sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do, but having expectation, having desires, and like, oh, I want this, like I want something better. It's kind of like a thing that if you set it in the back of your mind, I don't know how to describe it. It will like sip through your action. Like it will go into your work, it will go into your actions, and eventually it will lead you there. It's like an underlayer. It's like an underpainting layer that will kind of be there. It's like an ambient feeling. It's faith. There you go. I guess that's another word. Uh, and like having those expectations is great because you will arrive at the places where you want to be, and hopefully people that you work with will have the same mindset, will enjoy working with you, and it's a much healthier collaborative environment. And that's what I found with the firewall, where it's that.
Sick. I like the way you just explained that. That is, and I believe that's a true phenomenon. What you mentioned, like it's the way it's like you said. That just whatever you have swimming, whether if it's considered a goal or achievement you want to make, if it's constantly there, whatever it does to the fabric of the universe, it starts changing things, and then it just kind of like just shifts you towards that. And I think it can work also in reverse in a negative way as well. But nevertheless, like yeah, like don't take for granted the stuff that swims in your brain subconsciously, especially stuff that you kind of are feeding yourself. Um, just another point on freelancing. So pre-Firewalk, would you say your, I guess, approach to freelancing was different, or was it the same?
No, it was
But
definitely different. It was more aggressive. It was more like,
interesting.
and aggressive in a way where you're like, oh my god, like suddenly you exposed to first, and like most importantly is leaving studio and going to freelance was an enormous jump in income. It was kind of like life changing difference. And then you suddenly like, oh my god, like you can make all this money, and if you work even more, you can make even more money. Amazing. So let's work even more. And then there was a period of like true grind, like really like doing a lot of work. For a long time, I worked 7 days a week for like years. Because I'm
Wow.
like, I get charged, like I charge by day, right? So I'm like, why wouldn't I charge for a weekend? I can work on the weekend, no
Yeah.
problem. It's unsustainable. And no one will listen to that. That's the thing. I didn't listen to that. I was told that, and that's fine. Everyone should go through that, and they will learn their own way sooner or later. And that's actually a good experience. Don't burn out. Don't like completely ruin yourself doing it, but like try it, see how it feels. No, you do it reasonably well and like with caution. It's a great boost to your life.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually I got tired of it because it was eating not only into my personal life, but it was eating heavily into like the personal work that I can do, the time I have to spend on other things. And now I pretty much only do firewall work. I work 5 days a week. I'm on a standard kind of 9 to 5 deal. And then in my free time, I do other things. And I'm, I'm very happy. I don't feel like I need more work right now, even though if I could take like weekend work or like do extra at the end of the day. At this point, the financial benefit of that is no longer as lucrative as it used to be. Because at some point, like money is great, money is amazing. Everybody needs money. It's a great resource that we have. But it's true that what they say, money will not make you happy. And I know it's a cliche thing to say, and everybody says it, but I found out it as well. I'm like, wow, I didn't think that would be the case. Like, but it is. And eventually, you start valuing like, oh, your time. Obviously, as you get older, you start understanding that okay, like life carries on, and you age, and eventually you will die. I know a little bit morbid, but we have finite amount of time in this world. So now I'm trying to prioritize more like, okay, what is that I want to do? And I don't know, maybe all these personal projects will pay off and will be worth in the long run. I don't know. We'll see.
Mhm.
That's an exciting part about it. But yeah, now it's way healthier freelance, and of course, your work becomes much better once you do that. Once you're not overworked, once you're not constantly thinking about a million different projects, you just wake up. I'm like, I think now I have a very, very healthy work-life balance.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned as well a bit a while ago is that as much as you can hear, as much as you can get people's advice and see their experiences, you have to kind of walk the path yourself to really find out which limits you can push, which limits you can't, and ultimately the limits will tell you themselves if you can't push past it because they'll destroy you in return. Um, do you see this as your kind of way of doing things now, or do you keep an open mind to seeing it maybe change? Do you think you? I guess maybe a better question is: do you think you can see yourself going back to the old ways, like as in 7 days a week and hunting for it, or do you think that's changed? This definitely is the path forward, and whichever shape that may take or may evolve going forward, do you think it's going to be the similar kind of vibe and setup you have now? That's the way forward for you.
I think, I mean, so 7 days a week never stops. That's the thing with
Sure.
the
Yes,
design.
that's true.
It's just depend on how you spend those. I don't think I'm gonna, work 7 days a week on client work. Hopefully, I don't have to do it ever again. Uh, because I realized that there's a lot more value in spending that time on the stuff that you're passionate about and the stuff that you can. So to kind of like to make more sense of it, I'm just gonna quickly run down how I see industry steps based on other people. In my opinion, if we dilute it, there are a few industry shelves you can like go through. You start like, you're a junior artist and you learn and you're excited and maybe you work in a studio, maybe you go freelance and then you swap, you either go studio to freelance or freelance to studio and you learn those things. And eventually you get good. You get, I don't know, famous, you make a lot of money, whatever, you make cool projects. You can continue that forever. There are people who like been doing that for 30 years. That's a very good stable path. It's amazing. It's really good. Uh, or like I mentioned before, where like I see studios as kind of like there's like a cap to the studios, or like cap not to the studios, but to the project that you can work on at some point. Because I'm like, I work on an amazing project right now, but do I want to work on other people's projects forever? No. So the next step for me, and I know it will, hopefully it will change, where it's gonna be 7 days of working on my own thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why I'm so excited about it, or the reason why I want to kind of like break out of the studio and just kind of do my own thing, because you can do it. And two of my favorite examples that have achieved it in a way, it's Ash Thorpe and Maciej Kuchara. They both have their own things. And when I look at it, I'm like, that's what I want to do. I don't know in which form. I'm not going to, make anime or cars, but I want to find my thing that is kind of going to be like my baby. And I mean, hopefully it's financially sustainable as well somehow. Whatever it's going to be, I feel like for me, the future is going to be right now. I want to finish the project we're working on, release that, see how that goes. And then after that, really try and establish my own thing, quote unquote, whatever that thing would be. And that's like the high category of this industry where not many people do that. And it might be very arrogant to be like, oh, I want to do this, like I want to be in the highest category. But why wouldn't you want to be? Why wouldn't you want to create your thing? Why wouldn't you want to make something that's your own and that's great? And like, don't everybody want that? Do you just, and nothing's wrong with not doing it either, right? So for me, my future, I see it as not doing 7 days a week of client work, but putting 7 days a week into whatever that thing is. And I have some projects of my own that might work out, might not work out. Time will tell. But that's kind of how I see my path in the industry. What's beyond that, I have no idea, because you don't see it until you get there, and then you're like,
Yes.
maybe there is like, it's like an iceberg. Maybe
Yes.
there's something more down there. Maybe like even more things. I don't know. And I'm excited to find out. We only live once.
Sick. That was going to be my follow-up question. Does that excite you, not knowing what's to come, or does it strike you with fear? Because I've met people, and I'm kind of like in the middle. It depends on what it is. Because sometimes I'm like that. I shit my pants just thinking about it, and other times thinking, yeah, let's go. But yeah, you kind of just answered it for me, thinking that like the excitement. Do you think that excitement is ever under threat, or have you seen that excitement ever under threat based on situations or scenarios, or maybe just even where you're at in your life at that particular point, or is it a constant for you?
Oh, it's a constant. It's like everybody likes exciting things, and like your question, like, oh, is that excitement like exciting? It's like, yeah. Why people scroll on Instagram? Because you get constant dopamine hits, but you just get them every 0.5 seconds. Whereas
Yeah.
I like great things. I'm willing to wait 5 years. It's a very slow scroll, and you can slowly see the image coming out. I'm fine waiting for that. I don't need immediate thing. I'll just and if it fails, I enjoy the process. I love the process. I like designing things. I'm fine with I don't need instant result. I'm okay doing the work. So yeah. And I can't wait to see what's beyond that. And it's a little bit depressing for me because again, I know we only have finite amount of years. There's so much to do in life. And we're only touching on design industry. That's like a tiny industry of this planet. There's so much in this world and life that I won't get to enjoy. That's very unfortunate. But at least I'm gonna see how far the design thing goes, or I'll try my best.
I had a similar epiphany where I was thinking like, I'm never going to be able to experience all the things I want to experience, or just even there's some things that would probably I would see as like an absolute joy that I would never ever get to see, which was a bit of a weird experience, weird emotion happening at the time. But at the same time, I found that almost weirdly like inspirational that that's possible. Like of all the awesome things, it's impossible to experience all the awesome things. So you just kind of got to go with what's in front of you. But regarding your personal projects, where is that at? Like, what? How do you see? Do you have obviously not to give too much away? But do you have like I guess a roadmap of what you want to do, or are you still figuring that out right now?
Oh no, there's a million roadmaps. So I never struggled with quote unquote like art block or like, oh, I don't know what to do. I have opposite. I know too many things that I want to do. I have too many ideas, and for me it's very easy to escalate ideas. So I can but I don't really think anymore in one image. I think in like a project. So like if I come up with an idea, like one of the things I want to do. So the next thing I want to do is revamp my portfolio. So I'm gonna remove, and I've been saying that for years, but it takes a long time to do this stuff. Patience,
Yes,
guys,
yes.
patience. It will happen. I will delete it again. I'll delete everything and I'll upload new stuff. And for the new stuff, there's so many things I could do. And the way I like to approach it is like I would get like one idea, and one of the things I want to do for a new portfolio is like a nice post of a lot of like laser turrets. I know it's not super exciting for me. I was watching some video about like US Navy. They have like lasers on their warships, and it's almost like this NASA X US military blend. I was like, that's a really cool laser. And then immediately in my head, I'm like, what if you scale it like 10 times? What if you make it a planetary defense laser? What if you put it like on a floating platform? And now I'm suddenly, oh, that's a project.
Yes.
So like I try to think in terms of projects. I'm like, I'm really excited about it. I haven't seen laser turrets for a long time. Like no one's done it. Like, yeah, maybe there's some on our station. I haven't seen anyone doing it like expand it and make it like really good. I'll do it. Yeah, hell, it's gonna be me. I like laser turrets. Fine. Let's go. And like everything I try to do, I'm like, pick an object, can expand it into mini project. That's a post rather than here is an image. Like I don't know, it's a like standard composition on the guidelines, castle, ground, whatever. Like, can I make more than that? And hopefully the next drop will be like maybe 5 posts, but each of them will be like a like a mini catalog of things.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, trailed off here with this stuff.
No, no, no.
I like
Awesome,
my
man.
laser turret.
Sick. Looking forward to seeing them. I remember I attended your talk at GFD North. I think it was last year.
Yeah.
I missed a big chunk of your talk at Concept 101. But one thing that did stick out to me, aside from, in my opinion, which is awesome work of yours and your approach, but what in particular, and you've definitely covered a lot of it today, is your philosophy on doing things, your conviction behind them, and that I think is A, very inspiring. It's also B, what I think a lot of people would do well in at least paying attention to try and like unlock it for themselves, because you're definitely in tune with, I guess, that aspect of being a designer, being a creative, which with my own personal battles with it, like I know it's not either fully solidified in my aspect, in my sense, and with other people, it's not even there completely. So I definitely want to commend you on that, and it's definitely inspirational to see that, because you do get oversaturated by coolness, but then the philosophy, basically, like you said, the how things work, the machining aspect behind it, like the way your machine is built and working, it's very well oiled, and it looks like it's very reliable as well. Um, but with in terms of like how your projects are going to come out, like is it, do you have a particular way, like is it going to be an IP, is it going to be a book, is it going to be a thing, or is that something you don't want to reveal yet, or again is that all roadmapped and figured out as well?
Uh, so the exciting answer is I want it to be all of the things that you mentioned. I want it to be the movie. I want it to be the book. I want it to be everything. But I have to be very realistic with this stuff where I'm just one person and I can do only so much. And I have to be very reasonable with how I approach and how I release stuff. And like, I have like my quote unquote IP that I've been working on for a while now. Uh, but that's separate from like a portfolio revamp. That's like a different thing because that is something I just work on for myself. And again, I don't care when it comes out. It might come out in 10 years. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, because once people see it, that's the thing. Once people see it, they don't know it took 10 years. And if you tell them it took 10 years,
Yes.
they don't care. They just see the
Nope.
final result. You're the only person that knows how long it took. So why does it matter how long it takes? The result matters. So with
Yes.
that thing, once it's out, I don't know in what form it's going to be out. Probably a post on ArtStation at least.
Yeah.
Uh, but with the portfolio revamp, it's just going to be like each post is going to be its own self-contained something. Like one article is going to be like bunch of laser turrets, and that's going to be just like, hey, here's a selection of 20 laser turrets, and if somebody needs laser turrets, maybe they can hire me for that. The next one will be, I don't know, something else, and maybe each of them will be slightly like different art style because like my IP is it's very set in the, it's very honest to the art styles that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there is a lot of need for those art styles in the industry. I don't think a lot of companies would want that stuff. Like it's very dark sci-fi. We kind of passed that thing. Maybe there will be a resurgence of that, but right now it seems like everything is a bit more safe and colorful, and we need to, like Fortnites and all that. And it's fine. It's fine. The industry does what the industry wants to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to do my kind of like dark military hard surface. And so that's very different from like the portfolio revamp. And the portfolio revamp, I'm like, oh, I just want to do each post maybe slightly different art style just to kind of test myself. Can I do it? Can I not do it? Like there's one thing I'm working on now where it's very angular. Uh, it's a tank. Okay, it's a tank. Jeez, I'm making another tank. There we go. But it's very angular, and angular stuff is very difficult to do. Like getting the thing with angular designs, they light very poorly because they're very planar. So once you have smooth shapes, like very compound shapes, they're much easier to light, and lighting is king. So those shapes are much easier to present and light, and they look more natural. Angular design is really, really difficult, very difficult, because there's a lot of slanted angles, sharp corners, light doesn't work as well. And I'm just sitting with this thing for 6 months, and I'm trying to compare like the references with what I do, and how the lighting works in the reference, and does it feel the same way on my design, which is like a different form. But so I'm like, okay, this is an example of being like, I work on something that I enjoy, I do something slightly different from everything else I do, and I'm trying to learn as well and kind of keep my design skills sharp, because execution is easy, design and vision and the feeling is hard. So hopefully the portfolio revamp will be will really show my strengths in different design languages, but they will be very subtle. It's not going to be one is stylized and another one is dark military. It's going to
Yeah,
be it's that wavy line. It's not like this.
sick.
Hopefully, it makes
That
sense.
that's great to hear because I'm in a similar boat. Again, revamping, redoing. I'd love to just burn the whole thing to ashes and just see what grows from that again. So, like, pointers for myself and other people that are probably doing the same thing. Like, what are the parameters that you have set yourself for this portfolio revamp? You definitely explained a bunch there, but are there specific things that you're looking for? Like, how do you know when it's ready? Like, is there a certain quality level you want to attain, or is it again about ideas, or is it just purely the projects that you're doing and whenever they're ready?
It's a good question, and unfortunately, there is no straightforward answer that one could follow. If so, okay, I'll give you one. I'll give the practical answer, the easiest way to do if somebody wants to do the same thing. Pick the work, pick it. So create two mood boards. That's what I do a lot of the times. One mood board is references for your design, like images from Pinterest, whatever, or like what's related to your design or what you're doing. And on the mood board, pick quality benchmark. I have a Pure board called Quality Check, and it's full of work of people that are far better than me, or I consider better than me, and that can either that do things better than I do. It might be a sketch, it might be a completely finished render, it can be a composition, it can be a lighting, it can be presentation. I keep it there, and I benchmark my work constantly against them. Not their design. I don't copy their execution. I don't copy their style. I copy the feeling. I'm trying to see like the way I feel about certain work. Do I feel the same way about my work? And you can train that. The more times you do that, the better you get. So that's one way of doing it more practically. For my stuff, when is it done? When I feel good about it. When I'm like, okay, this is. I get to the point with the designs where there is like nothing to improve, right? I'm pretty sure everyone was there. They like, look at it, it's finished, and I'm like, that's the danger. That's the danger. Step away for a month, come back. Oh, you'll see the stuff you can improve. Rinse and repeat, and then that month becomes a week, a day, an hour, a minute, and you train yourself. But eventually, you come up to the point where you're like, it doesn't need anything because it simply doesn't need anything. The vision is
Mm,
complete, at least at this moment, and you hit the wall, and the next time you level up, next time you come to the next project, you will look like a year later, you look back at this one and you're like, oh my god, what I was thinking. That's the big improvements. That's how you get these big improvements. But you need to push your work to absolute max, whether it's quality, idea, execution is easy, it's very visual. Quality of idea, much harder. What is a good idea? I
mm,
don't know, personal taste.
sick. Now, well, online and whenever you post stuff, usually the captions tell a different story to what you see with the stuff you post. A lot of it is, you could say, self-deprecating, or at least not liking what you put. Like, a lot of it is always a case of, okay, this is going to go in the bin now, I don't like this, or I want to scrap this completely. Is that you kind of like just tongue in cheek of just mocking social media, or is that generally how you feel about the stuff you post?
Great question. Really great question. I'm happy you asked, because that's something. So it is not mocking social media, but and it's yeah, a lot of, yeah, of course I don't like stuff that I do. And I, like, you look at my stuff online, I'm like, could be very vocal about it. And that's not a good thing. So over like, especially like this year, as I'm trying to improve myself, like as a person, and jumping back a little bit when we were talking about like when you have this underpainting in your brain where you're like, you like believe that something's going to happen or you try to achieve something, it can work in reverse, like you mentioned. And I feel like for me, it became like, because I always tell myself, oh, I don't like this. This is garbage. And it actually everything becomes garbage. I'm not happy about anything. I don't want to live like that. So it's unreason. It's unreasonable. And I've been doing that for years. And now I'm trying to unlearn it. And it's because I'm trying to like educate myself a lot more about like neuroscience and how humans work and how human brains work, how we think. And one of the things that I've learned recently is like, if you keep telling yourself something, you're gonna believe it. You're gonna wire your brain in a negative way. That's just how brain works. So you kind of, now I'm trying to unwire myself. And when I look at my work, I'm trying to be not like, oh, I hate it. This is garbage. Blah, 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 so edgy. No, I'm like, okay, this is not my best work, but that's fine. It will never be. I try to see positive things in it. I'm like, oh, I like some parts. I don't like other parts. How can I improve other parts? But I'm actively trying not to think in like extremes, like, oh, this is garbage, because then everything starts becoming garbage. Everything starts
Mm.
becoming bad work when it's not. And another thing I found, it actually annoys other people, which is not good as well, because other people, it's unfair because I think it's unfair to the viewer because they will come to me and they're like, oh, I really like this thing. And you're like, no, what it's stupid. It's bad. And then they left with like, what? Like, oh, is their opinion wrong? Is their taste bad? I don't think it's good. And I need to work on that. I need to stop doing these things. I need to be more reasonable. And if I say that something is not good, it's like, or maybe I should explain why it's not good. Maybe that will help the viewer or like whoever tries to learn from it or understand why they like it or don't like it as well. So yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Good thing you brought it up. I'm trying to work on it, and it goes with everything in life. Like
Wow.
being less extreme. That's something I need to really, really work on. And stuff like Instagram posts and like those small captions, like you see, you mentioned them, right? It's not good that you mentioned them. It should not be the case.
Well, my perspective was just trying to like see the angle that it was coming from, because there's like, especially with social media, we all have them. We have these masks that we put up, and social media is literal mask. We have a display pic, which is a mask, and then the post and all that kind of stuff, and how you present it. Everyone has a different motivations and whatever else. So it's just like for me, just a curiosity, because um that's something that I go through more in private. Like I am very, and this is something I've discovered from my family telling me about this about myself. I'm very harsh and critical of myself in different things. And yeah, even with my work, it's a case of the love is there when it's being cooked, but once it's served, I have no passion for it or even care for it, which is something that a case of like, maybe that's what's missing. Maybe I need to attach that to that as well. But putting that to one side, I was just curious because from my personal point of view, I'm always fascinated by people. And when you mentioned about firework as well, like in other non-creative jobs I've had, in creative, it's similar to yourself. It's been mainly freelance, so it's basically the concrete wall. But in other non-creative jobs, it has been in teams, and working with people has been fascinating. Even the ones that are not great people, and just understanding what makes people tick and all that kind of stuff. So again, not to ramble on too much, but yeah, it was just interesting to see, because you'd see like it's almost like a juxtaposition. Like this is clearly something that, at least in social media terms, we could, if you want to look at it like say, just analytically, that's something that would do very well on social media in terms of that side, versus the your take on it, which is almost like a complete opposite. It's almost like, I guess you could say, similar to when you see those philosophical captions versus the actual picture, which is definitely not philosophical, but for some reason that's the formula that social media really likes. But yeah, no, I was just super curious, but it's also interesting to hear your take on that, because you could have easily said, yeah, it's just, you could say like trying to be comical about it, or just my way of handling social media, because although that's one of the things I'm responsible for at Learn Squared, I find social media very strange and surreal and odd. but it's something that's very ingrained. And even what you just mentioned there, you kind of like also showing how it is infused with how we do things, because you're thinking about the viewer and their experience about your work, yet it's your work. You have every right to feel how you want to feel about it and how you want to portray it. So that's also interesting to look at as well. But in terms of like your journey about how the brain works, I'd love to talk a bit more about that. That's something that I've been looking at as well, like for, again, life experience and just other particular things, really trying to like decode not only mine, but just generally our, I guess, human existence, not to get too like all philosophical and pseudo whatever. But I find that A, extremely fascinating, but also B, extremely helpful when you do kind of understand a different perspective or a point of view that you never had experience of before. But how has that journey been going for you, and what have you discovered in that time?
It's been amazing. I'm trying to consume as many books, podcasts, and opinions as I can from all facets of life and all the different points. And I'm trying to position myself in life more and more in the middle, right? Or like trying to be kind of, I used to have a lot of like strong opinions on a lot of things, and maybe I still do. But what I'm trying to do now is the more I learn about the world, the people, the social, political, economical landscape of this planet, the more I realize that it's so immensely complex. It can be even applied to the games industry. It's such, even though it's a small industry, it's so complex. There's so many moving points. Like people can be unhappy about like this, or they want to change this thing, or oh god, like it's every. So like I'm trying to just learn as much as I can and kind of internalize it for myself, trying to see where can I apply things in my life, challenge my own established beliefs and opinions, both in design and in life, in everything, which all interconnected. Uh, Preach less. Uh, try to have try to like have more informative opinions, and I think that helps with the with just like day-to-day communication at work as well. Like if we bring it back to the design, and it's just interesting to see because I like you can see in my work like I like complex things like the designs, and I find humanity very interesting and complicated. There's so many facets and there's so many intricate details that I'm just the older I get, the more I think or learn about it, the more I realize that there is no true answers to anything. There's no one way. We all completely different. And there are some things that generally work and there are some things that generally good to do. Overall, it's all a big mush. And I try to not position myself in any camp and kind of just try to like observe. I want to be I want to be an observer. There is a what's his name? There was a stand-up comedian that amazing quote. Was it John Carlin? I think it was John Carlin. It was "Life is a circus, and we have a front row seat." There we go. Uh, so yeah, I'm trying to detach myself from dramas, opinions, and I'm trying to learn about everything and just kind of like be a student, trying to be a silent student and have less vocal opinions and more here is the stuff that I want to show the world, which is design work, and that's what I know. That's my kind of thing that I'm more or less versed in, and trying to like really, really master that while being curious about everything else. And through that, I'm trying. I'm like again, I'm realizing that like like a lot of my personality is not really positive. It's not really good for me or the people around me, and I need to change that. Like writing the negative captions, because now that you even mentioned, I was thinking about like, damn, like it's really unprofessional. Like you have some like potential client, let's say somebody finds me on Instagram, like, oh, I really like this work, and they're like, this is garbage. The first thing they read, and they're like, maybe it is a garbage. Let's go to somebody else, right?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
See? So the more I learn about the world and how the world works and how humans work, the more I refine myself and my approach, how I talk to people, how I approach work, business, relationships, friendships. And I wish I would start it much earlier. I wish I would do it 10 years ago, like everybody says.
Mhm.
But I think I'm happy I'm doing it now because hopefully in 10 years, I'll be obviously better human. Everybody wants to be a better human, but also that will get into the work somehow and get better work. And life is progress. I love the progress, right? So yeah, I think my advice would be, not opinion, my advice would be for people to just learn about yourself. Like, ask people what they think about you. I wish I would ask people like 5 years, like, what do you think about me? Tell me, am I an annoying person? Or am I great? Am I not great? Like, just that's yeah. I think that's more interesting to me now than the design. Design became not easy but mundane. Like, I can do it, but like the other aspects of life, that's I think it's very neglected uh in general, especially in this
Mm.
industry, because everyone just wants to make images, but eventually kind of need to improve yourself, not only your art.
Totally agree. And back to your underpainting analogy, like the more you do that, that will fuel that underpainting aspect, and it will definitely seep through. And we mentioned about like, I mean, I'm 37, and there's a lot of things that I look back 10, 20 years ago thinking I wish I did certain things then or whatever. But at the same time, also, like you mentioned before, like it's a case of it's better that I kind of took that path, found the limits, let the limits kind of either like trip me up, push me over, or realize I can handle them and then just grow that way. Um, I also like what you said about detachment. That's something that I've kind of, I wouldn't say come to the conclusion of, but that's something that seems to work for me as well. Like detaching from things and looking at things in a detached way, not in a weird like I don't care kind of like cold way, but like not being in the fire to see what the fire looks like or how hot it is kind of thing. And you seem to be more level-headed and see things objectively, especially things that happen to you personally. When things happen personally, it's very hard to see things level-headedly because you have your opinions, your emotions, and all the things that happen. But at the same time, sometimes a lot of that stuff is through hindsight as well. You mentioned books or other things that you're looking at. Any particular recommendations or things that really stood out to you that were like, okay, wow, that kind of made me see things in a different way, or I wish I had knew that sooner?
So the let me just Google. I just literally forgot the. Oh yeah, the one of the greatest podcasts that I really enjoyed, the Huberman Lab with Dr.
Mm,
Huberman.
yeah.
Amazing insight into like the neuroscience of like he's a professor. He knows what he's talking about. Like just just good scientific look into humans. So mostly I try to like there are all the books that like people know, like the famous books about like sleep, money, focus, like all of those. Like there's probably a list somewhere online. I've read them a while ago, but I like conversations more. I like when people sit face to face and they discuss it. So the Huberman Lab, there is a guy named Chris Williamson. He has a pretty big podcast now, and he has all sorts of guests. He brings controversial people. He brings experts. He brings like plethora of various. It's none of this design related. I don't listen to anything design related, by the way.
Love it. Yeah.
So and just listening to stuff that I would not otherwise listen. Just trying to hear the opinions. Like I love listening to people that I disagree with or have opposing opinions. I'm like, why? I might still disagree after that, but at least I've heard it. And yeah, so those two are really great. I would say those two are like the kind of quintessential for me at least. And you don't need a million of these. I think between those, especially like Chris's podcast, because he brings so many interesting people. Like each guest, you can go and do separate research into what they
Mhm.
do and how they approach stuff, and you just learn. You can, if you listen to that for like a week, like full day, you're gonna get so much information overload, and a lot of this stuff will just completely dissipate and disappear. But some
Mhm.
stuff will settle, and the stuff that settles, you should probably go investigate. Like, oh, like that's
Yes.
interesting, and then you kind of dig into it, and you start learning things that you would not otherwise learn. That's my approach, and I'm really grateful that we live in time where you have access. You can listen presidential candidates on podcasts. Ain't that crazy? You can listen to top educators, top doctors, top whatever the 0.001% of people that actually know what they're talking about. Not just some random opinions from me,
Mhm.
people who spend decades learning about their craft, who are informed and who will tell you what a lot of the time is a fact, sometimes not, debatable. It's insane. We have all, for free. And why would you not take advantage of that? It's crazy. We have everything we need. The education with like Learn Squared, for example, that's another great resource if you want to learn stuff. It's all here, and it's all at your fingertips on your phone. It's crazy. Like I love it. I listen to podcasts all day long. Books. I listen more to like fiction or like sci-fi, or whatever. But podcasts definitely while I work. It's such a great way to learn while you're doing work.
Yeah, totally. And what you mentioned there about like learning more through conversation as opposed to something that's curated and presented, like that's something that really clicks with me. I only realized that over the last few years that that's what I like to, how I like to learn, because it seems more honest. It seems more like you can pick between the bullshit and the reality as opposed to something that's just presented and polished and all nice and stuff. Um, I like how you also mentioned that you look at stuff and listen to stuff that's not design related. Obviously, like when you're making a design, there's always that kind of visual references and libraries, all that kind of good stuff. But I'm in a similar point of view as well. I despise having to look at other art or stuff that's created to fuel design. I like stuff that's completely far, totally separated, wherever that may be. Cooking shows, I would love cooking shows, and just seeing how a high level chef approaches a plate and the stuff they go through and seeing how they present it. And there's so many similarities between that and making a design or a piece of art, whatever, and whatever that may be. Um, for you, what are those things? Like, it seems like that's similar to yourself as well. What kind of things do you enjoy aside from podcasts as well? That, or maybe not enjoy, it just things that you know that is going to fuel you, or just generally gives you good stuff. If that makes sense.
Discovering how things work, discovering how world works, and how it's a bit more abstract answer, I guess. There's no like, oh, like I do a thing in my free time. But
Yes.
for me, I love, like, I always ask like random questions, or I'm trying to figure, like, I think I'm very curious, inherently very curious. And for me, just finding out stuff about everything, doesn't matter what it is, it's just really inspiring. And it's inspiring in an interesting way, because the more I discover, like, one of the curses of knowledge, I think, is the more you know, the less you know, because then the more you learn, the more you find out that you don't know, and there's like even more stuff that you don't know. And again, we have finite amount of time, so the more I learn about the world, the more I realize that I want to have opportunities to experience more things, and that kind of helps me to put effort into my work, to put effort into my career, not to be like, I don't care, it's just the work. I, 9 to 5, get paid and go. I'm trying to improve it just so I can experience more of life, because there's so much to learn, so much can be travel. The easiest way to learn about things, travel. Travel needs money and time. There you go. So suddenly you're making money and working because you want to travel, because you want to see something. Uh, so for me, traveling and learning about things definitely up there, that really kind of like motivate me, not just to work, but just to like live, right? There's just so much stuff to do in life. Why would you not want to do that?
Mm.
And the more I learn, the more I'm like, oh, there's so many fields and topics I would like to be versed in. Not like a academic level, but like really, really understand. Like I would love to understand like cooking, right? I cook. I'm not the greatest cook, but like I can cook. I love making food. And I would love to have more time to do that. I would love to do more time to like do other stuff as well. So yeah, for me, it's the beauty of discovery. I guess that's what fuels me, rather than and video games. I love video games. I love playing video games. That's very inspirational as well. There we go. That's a simpler answer.
Any particular ones?
Ooh, right now, Cyberpunk. Yes,
Okay.
I'm replaying it for I don't know third time. So I think it's one of the greatest games ever made, despite whatever it
Nice.
went through. It's really good. Yeah.
Sick. I've got it. I haven't played it yet, but that's the next on my list to play. Um, obviously you work in the entertainment industry, you work on games. Are there any, is that something that you were aiming for? And if so, any particular IPs or projects in the past that really had an impact on you that you could say led to your career?
Fallout 3, 2000 and end of 2008 or beginning 2009. I got first. I got like my first big console, Xbox. I
Yeah.
booted up Fallout 3. I don't even know why I got Fallout 3. Maybe it came with the console. I don't know. And in Fallout 3, if you play it, you exit the vault and you see the world. And at that time, it was one of the first games where like, oh my god, like you can go everywhere and do everything. And then I found out that there's a concept art book for it, and I saw the concept art. And like I already knew before that I want to do imaginary things. I just didn't know you can
Hmm.
do it in video game context. And then I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. So the Fallout 3 was kind of like really eye opening. Like, oh, you can design all these weird stuff, and you can see probably make a connection between like I keep mentioning I want to do like dark sci-fi, and that's the rare like I guess the after effect of that game. It's a very dark post-apocalyptic game, and it kind of set the tone for a lot of stuff that I like. And after that, so that was kind of like the foundational thing. And after that, I'm very like when I play games or the games that I play, I'm trying to understand why I like them and what I like about them. And
Hmm.
some standouts are Metal Gear series. Only played Metal Gear 5 though, but I know a lot of people go, "How can you like the series if you haven't played all the games?"
Yeah.
I'm a designer. Like I like the designs, and I think Metal Gear series has some of the best designs ever done. Yoji's is a god of design, and he made some of the most iconic hard surface design ever. And it's the AP that I would love to work on if it would ever come back. So if someone from there listening, uh, but yeah, so like that's one. Dark Souls and anything that From Software makes, literally everything that From Software made, it's a because From Software, in my opinion, I don't know how it works inside. I might be wrong, but the way it seems to me, they approach stuff the way I want to approach. They just make stuff they want to make, and it
Yes.
works. They're like, we're gonna make this difficult game with like where you die all the time, and good luck with it. And there is no map or manual how to play this game, and the story is convoluted. But that's what we want to make. And if you don't like it, don't play it. And it's a
Yes.
cult classic. It's they just made a game, like the Armored Core, one of my favorite series ever. The fact that they released Armored Core after Elden Ring is insane to me. They made one of the greatest games ever that's so popular amongst everybody. And the next thing they release is a niche mech assembly game that most people not gonna play. That's such a gangster move. Mad
Yes.
respect. So Metal Gear, everything that From Software makes, Fallout series, recently stuff like Cyberpunk, very influential. Uh, generally anything kind of like a dark fantasy, dark sci-fi, well executed worlds, just some interesting characters, interesting designs.
Mm.
I enjoy stuff like that. And my all time favorite IP, not a game, Machine and Krieger. That's like the top tier. It's above everything else for me. Like it's my kind of
Yes.
lighthouse that I aim at.
I only discovered that literally recently, and I feel ashamed that I only did recently. But
Yeah.
it's astonishing, absolutely astonishing. Just seeing like let's say humbling. When you look at it, it just like wow. You just bow your head. in like
Oh yeah.
respect, and you don't look up because it's just too awesome.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great inspiration, and it's just I don't know what I see in it. I need more years to understand what
Yeah,
exactly I
yeah.
like. Right now, obviously, it's the color palette, shapes, but like, what's deeper? What is that deeper connection? I don't know
Yes.
yet, and I need to find out through time. It's not an instant thing.
And just a few more questions before we wrap
Yeah.
up. You mentioned mad respect. Obviously, that's something you mentioned in one of the talks that I attended. You mentioned obviously Ash and Mache, and the way you describe that is something that I definitely relate to in terms of when you appreciate basically like just heavyweights, as I refer to in the industry, or just people who you look at as like you could say North Stars, but specifically the why you like it, not what they've cooked, so to speak. It's the process behind it, and then all the abstract stuff, like how you look at that. I could say I look at it in a similar way, or at least that's the kind of stuff that I look like between the lines, read between the lines, or whatever. How to describe that best? But yeah, that was like, yes, that's the best way to explain that. But putting those guys to one side, give a shout out to the people that you think people need to know about. You have a few guys that you know?
Yes. One of my closest best friends, Robin Baumister. Not many people know about him. He's very kind of like underground. He's a concept artist at Guerrilla Games, and his portfolio is not super expansive. But the reason why I bring him up because he's one of the hardest working people I know. A lot of people say that, but he's an actual machine. He's got a family, he's got a full-time job, he's got all of those things, and yet, because we talk almost every day, we play games together, he's always working on something. Like he has like that drive to to create that I really relate to. And for me, it's very easy to communicate with him because he's very passionate and he puts a lot of effort into what he does. So he's an amazing designer. He's an amazing friend. We just traveled with him and Sheng Lam. Sheng Lam is another person. Everybody knows Sheng Lam. He's famous. Also amazing. We work at Firewalk together, and three of us, we just came back from US last. We went there a month ago, so we had like a little 2 week trip uh, through the like a west coast uh, of
Nice.
USA. So them two and another person to shout out who's not a designer. He's a 3D artist slash like a bit more technical focused. He works. It's a his name's Kirill. No one will find out about him. He's very secretive.
Okay.
But the reason why I want to mention him is because so he's a 3D artist at CCP Games, where I worked with him there very briefly. I freelanced for them a while ago, but I'm truly grateful to him because he's a absolute Blender legend. Like there are people who know Blender and the people who know Blender. He's the person who knows Blender, and I owe big part of my career to him because he helped me transition into Blender. And while I'm not praising any software, software is a software. It doesn't matter what you use. For me, it was very transformative. And he, as a person, just like Robin, he's very hardcore about what he does, but in a positive way. He's very focused. He's very driven. And just like, I just see myself in him, and we're good friends because of that, I think. But he helped me immensely with like technical Blender transition. He writes his own custom add-ons, all that stuff. And without him, I don't think I would be as fast or as efficient in my work. So huge respect to Mysterious Kirill. Uh, yeah, those are those are the most important art people around me.
Sick. And in terms of like, obviously the industry's going through, I guess you could say a thing. AI is one of those things that it's experiencing. Um, what is your take on that in terms of how you approach the way you create? Like, has it affected you in particular? Are you trying to change things or adapt to certain things, or is it something that's like, okay, it's there, but I'm sticking to what I want to do?
So I have two answers. I have a controversial answer and I have a safe answer. Which one do you want?
Both, if
Okay,
you can.
so I don't really care it hasn't affected me. That's a short answer because the stuff that I do is more technical. It's more technical design in terms of its execution. So yeah, you can AI generate a truck or a gun, but can you rotate it? Does it work in the engine? Does the lighting work? There's many things that like you can't really figure out. But overall, like I don't really have a very strong opinion about AI. The way I see it is technology progresses, and that's fine. We've been through this, I guess, since since people learned how to ride horses. There you go. That was a big deal. They're like suddenly like, oh my god, there's like people on horses with and they can shoot a bow. That's crazy. That's unfair. How can we fight them? We can't. So and then we had a lot more of those revolutions. So I don't think AI is a revolution, or maybe it is. I don't know. Uh, so it doesn't really bother me because I think we'll adopt. Uh, the more controversial take, I guess, or my personal, not controversial, I don't think it's controversial, it's just my opinion, that a lot of people, so AI gives you a solution, right? So like you want to generate ideas, be like, you generate ideas with AI. AI generates ideas, not your brain neurons. So every time you generate with AI, yes, you get a result, and yes, you make a decision which result to pick, but ultimately it's not your brain that came up with it. It's not the neurons firing in your head, and those neurons are not being trained. So I wonder, that's just my speculation, will, and that's more like a question rather than opinion even, will use of AI, extensive use of AI in design by the individual, will it dull their ability to imagine things? Because you switch from, oh, I'm using my neurons to imagine, to I'm using my head just to pick a variation. And yeah, you might be good at picking variations, but is that what you want to do? Or do you want to imagine? Because aren't we here because we like to imagine things?
Mhm.
Isn't that the primary reason why we're doing it? So I want to see AI progress. I do want to see it become useful, but useful in a way where it just solves tedious stuff, just like 3D rendering solved shading. Like, yes, I can shade a metal by hand. Does it really matter? And in some cases, it does. A good example, Arcane by Riot Games. It's a very specifically artistically stylized show, and it works amazing. And in that case, yes, it does matter how you shade the surfaces because it's inherent to the whole product. But in my case, I'm rendering realistic metal. That's it. There's no style. There's maybe some style, but like 3D rendering does the job. So if AI can be used to help me, but not to generate, that would be great. So example would be I'm waiting for the moment when, like right now, for example, in 3D, when you shade stuff, you can UV map, you can whatever, do all this. I just use procedural texturing. I would love to, you make a design, you kind of like give AI like an image of a tank, and you're like, oh, can you do the weathering on my material just like on the tank? So I don't have to manually move the masks. It doesn't really change the design per se. Yes, color and stuff is part of the design, but I'm talking about stuff like rust and weathering. Like, show me who wants to sit there and draw rust and weathering. Maybe there are some people, and I'm sorry if you can't do that anymore. I don't want to do that. So in that sense, I would love to have AI tools that help me to put bolts on things. We click one button and it intelligently scatters bolts along the panels. That would be amazing. I hate doing that. But the actual idea generation, the initial process where it's difficult, where it's not production, I think it's very dangerous if people get used to it because you kind of look for an easy way. And if your goal is to just make work, just it's all you want. You're just like, hey, here's my task. I want to finish it as efficiently as I can. And that's what matters to me. Amazing. You have a tool that does it for you, and I'm happy for you. But if your goal is to improve as a designer, create a vision, understand yourself better, and train your brain to come up with things where you can close your eyes and you can see the final result, then probably AI is, I don't know, maybe it's not that good, maybe it's good. That's just my take on it.
Cool. Um, Any final thoughts or words to the listeners as we wrap up?
Stay true to yourself within reason. Once it comes to all of this stuff, it's hard to find a balance between like what you want to do and what the world needs and your life and goals and everything. But I think staying curious, staying true to yourself, being honest, and just enjoying the process is something that I would focus on rather than chasing the results. Prioritize quality over quantity always. It's a tiny bit of tangent, but why do I say that? Because humans get accustomed really fast to things. Once you show me, like if you release 25 sketches, I'm less excited to see 26 one because it's probably the same thing. So there is beauty in scarcity. Most of the artists that I follow, that I check on, haven't posted for the last 5 years. And the reason why I check them and follow, I'm waiting for them to post. I'm not waiting for like somebody who's already posting all the time. I know you there. I know what you're going to show. Surprise me. Surprise everybody. Surprise yourself. So quality over quantity in all forms, and just general balance between life, work, expectations, setting correct expectations, setting healthy life goals, meaningful relationships, all of the usual stuff. So and learn Blender. That's very important as well. That's so yeah, that would be a bit of everything.
Amazing. And anything we can look forward to you? Obviously, we've got your personal work cooking whenever that's ready to drop. And again, super excited to see the stuff that you're doing professionally as well. Anything else that's maybe potentially in the works, or anything you'd like to say that we can maybe perhaps get excited about or not?
There may be or may not be a course coming out with my process and how I approach the design and my mindset a bit more in depth through the work. So maybe not. We'll see.
Cool. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. No, thanks for inviting me.
A big thanks to Alex for that inspiring episode. I'm sure, like me, you're excited for whatever he's got for us next. Hit the links to see what he's up to, and then head over to learnsquare.com and start your design journey today. I've been your host, Aaron Danda. Till next time.